Good morning and welcome as you join. Welcome, Casey. Welcome, Kimberly. Welcome, Mr. Simpson. Welcome, Nikki.
If there's a prize for the first, Stacy.
Yeah, Stacy and she get a prize. She was first.
So the first name we saw on the screen.
Welcome, Stacy Ann.
So if there's a prize for the person who logged in first, we probably need to give a prize to somebody who puts on their video first.
Probably, yeah.
Even though that's not something that's mandatory here.
Yeah. Yeah, anyone who wants to turn on their camera, you can just make that request and tech people will acknowledge that. But today, silence or not turning on your video is still participation. I just want to officially say welcome and thank you all for joining and for being on time. I would beg of you to allow us to give those who are still not yet with us and who are planning to be here a little grace, maybe another couple of minutes with your permission. So we'll give them a few more minutes. Thanks.
What I've realized over the last couple of days in having Zoom meetings with an individual or group, we're still not back to full strength in terms of internet capability, and some people had one day and then the next day, as if they're moving the cell sites around, so you give each one a little bit from day to day. So that happens. So we give thanks.
This morning when I was on my way back from the gym, and as I thought about just the different experiences, not just in Jamaica, but around the world. And I would say in the last maybe 5 years, everything from the pandemic and then Jamaica experience in Barry last year to what happened this year. And I'm thinking that at some point in time, to your Zoom remark, is that we were forced to go on virtual, a lot of virtual connection. And Jamaica is becoming ground zero for, I call it, a lot of virtual meetings, COVID, and now with Melissa. And though some people still cannot even connect virtually because there is no internet, there is no communication from where that is concerned. We take it for granted just being able to connect, and when we don't have it anymore, it's kind of like we realize, I don't know. It was just a thought as I was coming back from the gym this morning.
You're correct.
Go ahead, Dr. Sandra.
Yeah, you're correct. I was just going to share something that you had shared with me, Dr. Semaj, recently, that someone was saying they were redrawing the Maslow hierarchy of needs. And at the very bottom, at the base of that triangle was no Wi-Fi because it's like everything else depended on
Yeah.
I mean, we laugh, but it's how critical it has become to, what we do.
What I found useful for me is that at the beginning of Melissa, there was a meme going around pointing out the 37 years between Charlie and Gilbert, and then 37 years between Gilbert and Melissa. And I'm connected to all of those. And my experience of Gilbert and post Gilbert is what has really helped me with this whole process. Having physically gone through losing your roof, having no water for 3 weeks, having no electricity for 1 year, and the kind of adjustments that you had to make. And when you wanted to get material, you couldn't get things done because it just wasn't available. So drawing from that experience, it enabled me to process this at a faster rate, having been there physically. To walk through it is not the same thing as reading about it. When you physically have 3 children under 10, and having to go look food every day, because you don't have no electricity, you don't have no fridge, to put up anything. So you have to go back to basic, so very useful to draw from real life experience to process the future and the present.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're officially going to start and the others will join us. Welcome again and thanks for choosing to be here. Dr. Sandra Palmer, I always go by Dr. Sandra, CEO and Senior Partner at Above or Beyond. And today we're here because something feels broken. And it's not about being strong. It's not about anything else than being present, being honest, being gentle with ourselves and others, and learning even one small way to show up for ourselves and to show up for others. On October 28th, Hurricane Melissa just did not damage buildings. It rattled our minds, it rattled our bodies, it rattled our routines and our sense of safety. And we're gathered here today in this space to process pain, to process loss, post this event. Many of us are leading families, we're leading teams, churches, communities, while we're carrying our own loss. And as leaders, this session serves to give us a simple, humane way to talk, to be open, first with self and then to help others, without pretending to try to fix everything or to pretend that it's okay. In Jamaica, there is a saying, "Tek kinti kibahat bun," that Louis Bennett made quite popular. And what it really means is that when things get difficult, we smile, we laugh, we joke about it, we make it seem as if it's not that bad. We smile about it, and we know what that can do in the long run when it's not dealt with. And we'll get more into that today. But first, let me introduce my 2 other facilitators who are here with us. And this, as they say, ladies first. So I'll start with Dr. Hope Shaw. And Dr. Shaw is a registered nurse. I'll start with that because that's near and dear to her heart. And she was educated in Jamaica. She's from the West. I think that's important to say. She's from Montego Bay. And she is a researcher, and her research has focused on mental health and mental health related issues, especially in the local population. Currently, she's a professor in health sciences, and the curriculum that she teaches is grounded in care in science. That's CARING, care in science. And sometimes we feel when we interact with the system that there is not a lot of care in science. So she brings that to the space, and we welcome Dr. Shaw today.
Thank you, Dr. Sandra, and thank you to everyone who's here today.
Then we have Dr. Semaj. And Dr. Semaj is, I could say a lot of things, but to keep it short, I will say Dr. Semaj is president for Above and Beyond, both Jamaica and the US. And he's a psychologist. Sometimes he's referred to as a national psychologist. um, he's um, he's seen on a lot of unheard on radio and television in Jamaica, talking about topical issues, things of national importance. And he writes a daily blog called the Semaj Mind Spa and has been writing in recent times a lot about the hurricane and the impact of it and the lessons that we can take from that. And if you haven't yet subscribed to his blog, I invite you to the Semaj Mind Spa. So we are happy to have Dr. Semaj here today. Thanks for being here.
I'm indeed honored. I think it's part of our responsibility to, the notion of giving. This is what we do, so that in addition to physically and materially sharing people, this is our professional capability, and by making it available as such. And one thing I find interesting, just this morning, I got a message from somebody via Facebook message asking me, could I write something about the holidays? She's sort of grappling with it. How do you cope with the holidays? Do you still celebrate? Do you abandon the holidays? And I spent 3 hours this morning writing that. So in 2 days' time, I'll tell her, listen, here it is. Because people are realizing that it's not business as usual. We have to rethink something. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Brian. So I placed this in the chat, and I will just share. I haven't seen anyone responding that as you are coming in today, how are you feeling? What is one word that captures how you're feeling? You can go ahead and just share that. Okay, I'm seeing hopeful.
Afternoon, if I may respond instead of typing in the chat. I am safe and I am well and fine, but I am originally from Montego Bay. I believe one of the panelists is from Montego Bay, but I'm currently situated on the eastern end of the island. So I have many family members and neighbors who I grew up with on that side of the island. I feel a little bit heartbroken and saddened by the situation that they're experiencing. But each morning when I wake up, I try to remind myself that there is hope, knowing that they're alive and they have the ability to rebuild and to start afresh. So it's a mixed feelings. So even though I am safe and fine, my neighbors and my community members are not doing so well at this point in time.
Thank you for sharing, Mr. Simpson. And Jacqueline, thanks for sharing. You're feeling hopeful. That's a good word. We need a lot of hope, and anyone else is happy to share. Just if you don't feel like speaking, just type your word and I will just share that with everyone else. Okay, while that is happening, I will just continue by just going over some ground rules and to say who this is for and why we thought that this was important. When we say leader, from our perspective, a leader is not just someone who has a title in an organization or in a company. A leader is anyone who shows up formally or informally, and others call on you first. Basically, others depend on you, others believe in you, they seek your counsel, they seek your wisdom. And we're speaking to leaders today who are supervisors, business owners, managers, parents, pastors, community leaders, community organizers, or just in your own home as you lead your family, your friends. Maybe you're the leader in that group of friends, leaders from all walks of life. Today, we welcome you, and the focus is for us to take a pause, take a breath to put on our mask first, to treat with self, to think about how we are feeling, how we are processing what has been lost, how we are processing our own pain, whether the loss was direct or indirect, whether it was individual or collective. Because even if you weren't directly affected physical, just being a Jamaican, there is a collective sense of loss and pain that we're all going through. And we process that before we move on to looking at how is it that we help those who we lead at any level. How do we help those who depend on us? Do we even know what to say, how to say it, when to approach them, even as we deal with our own loss? So I just wanted to set the stage there. And a few housekeeping rules, and I thank Dr. Shaw for reminding me of this. Even as we talk in this sacred space, I will say, and whole audience, to process loss and pain, we want everyone to be respectful, knowing that what is discussed here at an individual level, if somebody shares something, it's not for public consumption, right? So we wouldn't want it to be shared outside of the room, the virtual room, not shared on social media or anywhere else. We ask that you honor that. However, what we want you to do, though, is to take away the learning, the lessons, the experiences from this, and definitely share that with others. We'll have a breakout session later, and maybe persons will share more personally. We want that to remain there, but the recording in general with the lessons from today will be shared. Will be sent to your email address, and for those who were not able to attend. So it's really about putting on our mask first as leaders, and we know that everyone's storm is different. Everybody's storm is different. And although it's one storm that came, we all experience it different. It's like you have a flood, we all may be in it, but we all may be in different boats, different size boats. Some people have no boat, some have a little canoe, some probably have a yacht somewhere. I mean, we're all at different places. And that's why leaders must go slow to go far. And we definitely have to echo the idea of the oxygen mask, which is you definitely have to fill your tank, put on your mask first before you can help others. Okay. So I'm going to give each of the facilitators 2 minutes to give share the opening remarks. I'll start with you, Dr. Leahcim, and then Dr. Shaw will go afterwards.
I use this concept of natural disaster very selectively. Why? Because I do not necessarily blame it on the storm. The storm does what storms do. Oftentimes is what we do. Before, during, or after. That makes it into a disaster. So at some point, we have to really analyze and assess that what happened, how we handled it, what were the lessons. One of the things that have been documented that oftentimes storms, whether physical or philosophical, come to transform. So it's not just something that destroys, and that can happen, and that does, but ultimately, what do we do after? How do we facilitate the transformation that is indeed possible? How do we get the lesson? There's always a lesson coming from the storm, so that if we can help persons to make sure they get the lessons and the transformation and to how we build back better, physically, philosophically, spiritually, socially, all of those, build back better. Thanks.
Okay, as Dr. Shaw is about to speak, and I'm monitoring the chat, persons are saying that they're feeling conflicted, thankful and hopeful, yes, but also unsure of the path forward for themselves, their family members, and Jamaica. Thanks for sharing that. Stacy, Donna, feeling uncertain. I hear a lot of that, a lot of people feeling uncertain, like, what's next? What's next? And for those who are still joining, papers are still joining, just drop your comments in the chat. How are you feeling as you are arriving? A word, couple words, a sentence? Over to you, Dr. Shaw.
Thank you, Dr. Sandra. So a couple things that stood out to me. One from what Dr. Semaj says, and the second statement from Mr. Simpson, as you know, I'm the person who comes from that part of the island in Montego Bay. I went to Montego Bay High School. So two things resonated with me. One was you feel safe, you're okay, but there are people who are not okay. And that's from Mr. Simpson. And then from Dr. Semaj, when he said people were now wondering, how do I celebrate the holiday? Can I celebrate the holiday? And I got that same with what was shared here in the chat. That word, Stacey, just has been stuck with me for the last 2 weeks. I live in Florida, but can I really enjoy Thanksgiving with what's happening in Jamaica right now? I'm conflicted. And I made a decision at the very last minute that I couldn't. No, is it a right or wrong decision? The jury will stand for that. But I knew that I had to travel to Jamaica to see for myself, to be there, to experience it. But in experiencing what everybody who's lived in Jamaica and the collective loss that we're experiencing right now is something that we really need to acknowledge. And what has happened is what we call, it's stressful. And what Jamaica and Jamaicans are experiencing right now is chronic stress. And what I'd like everyone who's here today, remember, when you think of chronic stress, I want you to look at it in parts. One, there has been trauma as a result of a natural disaster. There is environmental stress, meaning that the conditions are not the same. There's no Wi-Fi, some have no water, some have no electricity. The normalcy is no longer there. And we have to talk about psychological stress, because with a psychological stress, what is happening right now is that we're now starting to perceive, we're worrying, we're finding ourselves being bombarded with a lot of negative thoughts. And the other stress, the fourth stress that I want you to remember and acknowledge, because it's important for us in order to manage our stress, is first to acknowledge it, is that there is a physiological stress. So the physiological stress is where, for me as a healthcare person, that we are constantly monitoring is what's happening in our body. Because we can go about and trying to figure out, how do we help the person next door? How do we make sure that somebody gets a little extra help to do that? How do we make ourselves available? But as we're constantly moving in all these spheres, what is happening? What we need to start thinking, what is happening to our body? Because our body has a unique response to the stressful conditions that we're facing right now. So there are changes that is going on in your heart. There's changes that's going on in your lungs, your nerves, your muscles, your reproductive system, your immune system, your GI system. And what we're here making sure we acknowledge the loss, because it is a loss, and there are degrees of loss, but also trying to make sure that everyone here, including ourselves, leave with resources and tools on how to manage what is happening, so we don't have what we call a system failure. Because a system failure is our body system.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Shaw. And on that note, we're going to pause and take a breath, a 30-second breath, starting now. Welcome, Ryan. You can just drop how you're feeling as you're entering in the chat, one word or a sentence. We're going to take a 30-second pause, a breath, if you will, to acknowledge what has been lost and also what remains, both sides. What has been lost, and you can just close your eyes and go inside, center yourself, bring your 3 fingers together, thumb, index, middle finger, and find your heart space in that pulse and a 30-second breath. Okay, it's 30 seconds. Thank you so much for that. And feel free to just continue the conversation in the chat. How did that 30 seconds feel? How did it feel after? Were you able to quiet your mind? Were you able to go within? Were you even able to slow it down enough to feel that heartbeat in your fingertips, just gauging your pulse? And it's something you can just use throughout your day at any time. You can always pull on that when you want to just center yourself, find your heart space, and just be quiet. Just bring everything, just bring the temperature down, just bring the volume down.
If I may explain the whole process of the centrality of breath work, in that life begins with our first breath. And it ends with the last breath. So breath is the centrality. And oftentimes we tend to breathe too shallow. So the whole process of, count 4 in, hold it for 2, and breathe out slowly through the mouth for 6. So that you empty the lungs. And that whole process of breathing it out is a way of literally breathing, as what Dr. Hope talked about, breathing out the stress, breathing out the crosses. Just get it out to you. And it's a natural pause, and you start all over again. In for 4, hold for 2, out for 6. But that is the centrality of life. Your first breath to your last breath. So we give thanks for breath.
Thank you, Dr. Semaj, if I may add, and thank you, Dr. Sandra, for doing that. I can share with the participants here today that the breath work, and if you are not aware of this, is something that has been heavily researched. This is something that even for faculty meetings, that before we start our meetings, this is something that the dean of the college and the rest of the faculty members are encouraged to do before we start a meeting. And as leaders, if this is something that you could also introduce, it doesn't have to be done it virtually. We do it in person. And to Dr. Sandra's point, this creates, and Dr. Semaj's point is that it creates grounding, it creates centering. You know, you don't have to only do it in a formal meeting. This is something that you can practice. You leave here today, and if you're driving, just, if you can, just be intentional about what is happening to your body as you're driving. And sometimes we don't realize is that we're holding onto the steering wheel so tightly. Dr. Semaj point, we're breathing, but we're doing shallow breathing. And we talk about that system, we're not getting enough oxygen to our cells. So even now, don't close your eyes while you're driving, by the way, but you can start with that practice of breathing in and then breathing out. And it can be done at various times throughout the day. And science has really shown the health benefits of doing that breath exercise. I'm sorry if I took so long, Dr. Sandra. I just wanted to add that bit.
Yeah, okay. Dr. Semaj, you can continue about, regulating self first and dealing with self first, the guiding their body reset.
Well,
But you started talking about the breathing.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the whole thing about putting on your mask first, but there's also again, as we address leaders in the broadest sense of the word, that you also can't pour from an empty cup. So you have to take care of you, make sure your cup is full, and then at least it can overflow, and then you're able now to help other people. But also, even if you have moments of doubt, you notice that even at the most, I like to remember the prayer of Gethsemane. Jesus, in that critical moment, said, "If it be possible that this cup be passed from me." So even leaders will have moments of doubt, but guess what? You really can't display that. You really can't. You have to be strong for your children. When I experienced Gilbert, when the roof went and all of a sudden the room was just light. And I said, "Ooh, we can see the sky," It turned into something light, Then oftentimes parents here, you also know many times you feel like crying, but you can't cry in front of the children, because if that happens, you are supposed to be the strong one guiding them, huh? So you have to find a way to hold it together, so that even when after the meeting, after the session, you find a private place and you can let it go. And that's why it's important, even as psychologists, it's important that you can empathize, but without becoming contaminated. But then you need to release that, some other safe space that you can release that and help you now to recenter your life. But for your people, you really have to find a way to, again, empathize, but without becoming contaminated. Because if you break down with them too, then you're no longer able to help. The process continues.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So as we spoke about the importance of the breath, Dr. Semaj, and the proper way to breathe, sometimes you want to literally stop, make sure that you're grounded with your feet firmly planted on the ground. You're sitting, your back is supported, or at least it's straight, having your hand on your heart, or the pulse here, or the fingers together, just to be able to connect yourself with your heartbeat and to just close out all the noise. And when I say noise, I'm not just speaking physical noise, but the mental noise. Because just to be able to find your pulse means that you have to get quiet and pay attention. And when you try to do it, sometimes you realize how hard it is to find it. It's always there. It has never left, but it takes so long to find it sometimes because there's just so much going on. that we have to bring the level down so much to this cellular level to just connect to the heart space. And sometimes that's all it takes for you to just stop when everything goes into overdrive. Like pause, stop, breathe, and just literally empty your mind like you're thinking about nothing. Because
If I
it's
may
hard
add,
to hold two thoughts at the same time. It's kind of hard to do that.
if I may add, one of the benefits of that, oftentimes, with the whole concept of meditation, you talk about the gaps, the gap between the thoughts. There are always thoughts circulating in the universe and through your mind. And it is estimated that at least 70,000 thoughts go through your mind each day. But here's the problem. Most of them are the same thoughts that went through your mind yesterday and the day before and the day before. And when there are times of crisis, oftentimes it is those negative thoughts that just keep circulating and keep pulling you back down and pulling you back down. But in order to facilitate fresh, new insight and new thoughts, when you slow the breath down and you create more gaps and stillness between the thought, new thoughts have the possibility. And too many times, when people pray, they're the one doing all the talking, but they're not listening for the answer. Sometimes the answer comes as whispers. Sometimes the answer comes as just a small insight. But all prayers are answered. Sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no, sometimes the answer is you gotta be kidding. But you gotta be there. That stillness, that quietness, that slowing down so you can hear the answer. And I'm using the word hear in the broadest sense of the word.
Okay. And Dr. I hope now you're going to continue with talking to us now about the specifics of what's really going on at this time, so as the persons on the call can really stop and process what's going on inside of them. How are you really feeling? What's going on at the human level, at the home level, at the work level? Over to you, Dr. Shin.
And thank you, Dr. Sandra, and also Dr. Semaj for just framing those contexts. So when I started out, is talking at the general system level, what's happening. And as we're doing a lot of the talking, and I wish I could hear some voices as I'm talking right now, but I know you're hearing me. If you are willing to share, I would love to see a raise of hands or a comment, something in the comment section. How many people are experiencing sleepless nights or sleepless days? You're not sleeping that well.
Okay, I see Mr. Simpson turned on his camera, so do you want to say something?
What I'll say is this: I am not experiencing sleepless nights because, as I said, I am not widely affected or badly affected by the hurricane that just passed. But I keep going back to those who are not in a privileged position as I am. And I can just imagine how many nights that they would have slept uncomfortably, even if they had a good sleep at all. Because some of them have lost, the beddings, mattresses, and so forth to have a good night's rest. So I keep going back to other person's plight and other person's pain, and my heart goes out to them.
All right. That's so important that you raised that, Mr. Simpson, because I have been having sessions with persons in Jamaica. I was actually in Jamaica during the hurricane. I'm actually now in the US office, and I keep hearing the same thing. Every time I'm going to eat, I'm thinking about those who don't have. Someone was saying to me recently that their office was talking about planning the Christmas party in Kingston, and like the staff was like, no, we can't do this. We can have a Christmas party. No, how do we show up and enjoy ourselves when our brothers and sisters, some have nothing? Maybe we should pool those funds together and send it. So the pain is real. So although maybe you didn't lose your roof and your house, and you probably have water and Wi-Fi and electricity, your pain is also real. I'm reading here in the chat, Stacy Ann is saying, during the hurricane and after, she was experiencing a lot of sleeplessness, not being able to sleep, to your point.
So at a cellular level, when we talk about that, and to Mr. Simpson's point, and what you just said, Dr. Sandra, is that that's what's happening as a result of the stress. I can share with you, for maybe I wasn't sleeping well. So I knew at a cellular level what was going on in my body, that I was, to Dr. Semaj's point, the thoughts, the same thing I thought about yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before, was the thoughts that were preventing me from having a good night's sleep. So sleeplessness is something that you experience as a result of the stress that you're going through right now. Now, the question is, and the breath exercise is one of those exercises, one of the many exercises that can also help with facilitating a little more restful night. What is it? The anxiety. That's something that sometimes people are not able to really put a finger on or not. Am I anxious? Am I not anxious? And it presents in various ways. And I'll leave that to Dr. Semaj to expand on that some more. What is also happening is that you're not eating as well anymore. I'm sure I'm hoping, or I'm not hoping. I would love to know on this chat who is willing to share whether or not have your diet, have you been eating different in the last 2 weeks? Is there something that has changed?
Mm-hmm.
Well, for sure, when I went in the supermarkets and I saw the price of some of the vegetables that had just shot up from before to after, we just tell you what, we can eat some vegetables, next month, when the price come back down, because so we've had to make adjustments in terms of that. And one of the points that was made also indirectly, the concept of survivor's guilt.
Mm-hmm.
That Mr. Simpson and other persons who were not physically in the destruction zone, but then survivor's guilt. The fact that, okay, but I was spared. Through no fault of your own, you were spared. You had no control over the path of the hurricane, but circumstances that. And one of the things I mentioned in one of my recent Substacks is that those of us who were spared, you were spared so that you can help. You are spared so that you can help. But I also recommend, back to what Dr. Shaw pointed out, the stresses and the anxiety. One thing that we have to do is to guard our inputs, eyes and ears, reduce your media consumption. Because even during the hurricane, I turned off the sound on the various broadcasters and the various TV people. Everything, they tried to do as much as they could to make it sound worse than it was. And even now, traditionally in news, if it bleeds, it leads. So most of what we're hearing is the bad news that further bring you down. Social media is even worse because social media has absolutely no filters. And you're seeing more and more and more. But I found something recent where some people are still sharing some good news. I saw something as basic as a little video recently. This woman showed a picture of her garden before, and she was reluctant to share the picture after because it wasn't really damaged that badly. But she saw someone in the supermarket who knew her and said, "Can we see what your garden looks like now?" And she told, "We want to see." But listen, with all that storm, most of your plants made it. Most of your things made it. so that if you can facilitate more good news, be more selective as what you allow into your head. Because that will just further help. You can't do anything about it, but we who were spared, we were spared so that we can help.
Okay. Just
To
sharing
Dr.
something here.
Semaj's point, when you look in the chat and Miss Welch is sharing that sleeplessness, headaches, bouts of crying, and thank you for sharing, Miss Welch, overwhelming, not sleeping well, not being able to watch the devastation, because the media and what you watch is so geared to feed you more of what you're seeing. So if you're watching devastation, you're gonna see more devastation. So I decided to have a little game with my media consumption. So rather than watch the devastation, I wanted to see what was going well, to watch that instead of seeing all the devastation. Not that I'm not acknowledging it, but Miss Welch, what you have shared, a good old-fashioned bawling is healing. So don't be ashamed of a cry. The headaches, the no sleep, no, those are the elements that we'll speak to a little bit more, because we want to make sure that that's something that is not prolonged, that is going to cause long-term damage. And we'll share some tools as far as how to make sure that we are addressing those elements that is negatively affecting your health.
Okay. All right. So we're like 3/4 of the way. We have 15 minutes left. Someone is mentioning isolation is their go-to. Probably want to address that. I think that was Miss Welch. Judith shared that although she's not having sleepless nights herself, but each time she wakes up, all she can think about is those who have been affected and how they're coping, and are they even in a position to get a good night's sleep? So it's really what you were saying before, Mr. Simpson, that this person is experiencing the same thing. So yes, they're in a comfortable bed sleeping, but every time they wake up, they're wondering, like, my God, how are those who are affected? How are they coping? What's going on? So how do we treat with that? How do we treat with those who are, going down the isolation path, or not eating, not sleeping, not drinking? What do we need to do to take care of ourselves as leaders?
Jacqueline says that thinking of the lives that are lost and how unfortunate that is. That is real. That's something that can stay with you for a very long time. And it is part, the research says that it is part of the grieving process. But we have to talk a lot about how are we making sure as we continue to grieve that we're taking care of ourselves.
Yeah. It means that we have to be deliberate, Dr. Shaw, in terms of making sure that routines continue, because that's how you know something is going wrong when the routines start to fall by the wayside. So if you used to exercise, you're not. You used to eat at a particular time, you're not. The things that you used to enjoy, you're not enjoying those things anymore. I think that's a sign. I mean, that's more your area and Dr. Semaj is there, but these are some of the signs that that something is off. Something is off. You're not sleeping. Your thoughts are not supportive. They're not positive thoughts. And what should one be doing to address that?
All right. And our conversations now really is centered on how do we make sure that we heal, because as we rebuild, the collective rebuilding is that there has to be healing, but healing, putting on the mask first on yourself so that you can help somebody else. So healing in ways, there are various ways of doing this. We talk about the breath exercise. We also need to understand that there are a lot of aesthetics elements that can be included in your healing process so that you are taking care of yourself. So there are people who paint. There are some people who write poetry. There are individuals who can get into like the community atmosphere that has been completely just unraveled. The people who you've normally interact with, there that doesn't happen anymore. But it is an aesthetic element that affords you self-care. Just to name a few.
Okay.
For
All right.
me,
So,
writing is one of the things that stabilizes me, and that's why every day sometimes I write 3 articles, because that's why I process things, because I'm able to come to a conclusion by working through it, doing the research and working through it. And I noticed that collectively we actually did the right thing instinctively to facilitate recovery. The first phase is stabilize, contact. How many of you reached out and tried to make phone calls and try to find out and indirectly what Miss So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so, how they're doing? I know a few persons ultimately jumped in their vehicle and drove all the way, even though they couldn't get through the roads, because they had to make contact. Then the second phase, with the reconnection, you get back into the rhythms of life as much as possible, as much as you can, because that's the second phase. And then now you start to restore. So reconnect and then restore. So that at least instinctively, that is what. But we have been suggested that, listen, we probably don't. I know someone who took 4 hours to get from Miami Bay to St. Anne's Bay. 4 hours, because the traffic was not moving, because everyone else wanted to reconnect with persons on that side, So it has been done to a large extent now, but we maintain those connections as much as we can.
okay, thanks, Dr. Semaj, Dr. Shaw. All right, so we're going to take 6 minutes, and Tony, give me 6 minutes on the clock, a breakout room. We have 16 of us, 3 facilitators, so that brings it down to 13, 12. So probably like we will maybe just have 2 to 3. We could have 3 rooms, right? 3 breakout rooms, Dr. Semaj? And
Yes.
yeah, for 6 minutes and an opportunity to share within the room. As facilitators, we will just move within the rooms and just listen.
All right.
Just listen. And this is a free space to share what's on your heart, what's hurting you, what's your pain. Just share that with somebody else in that space, and also listen. Also listen. I'm giving no script, just based on how I'm being led. Just in that space, how are you feeling? What's your pain? And probably what could help? What could help? Right? So go ahead, Tony. So for those who are joining us back, I had sent a broadcast message out. You may have seen it. So what one person from each group, if you so desire, to just give a little feedback on the takeaway from your group. You can just raise your hand, or you can just type in the chat and I'll just call on you if you want to go
I know
first.
Mr. Simpson is going to go first. I was sitting in, he had a podium when I stepped into that group.
All right, I'll go. Well, in our group, we were having a discussion, about particularly some of the affected areas in Montego Bay. Michelle mentioned Cathinal. That area is I'm very familiar with that area. I'm actually, where I'm from is very close to that area as well. So Cathinal, West Green, those are some of the areas that were badly affected. And we were trying to see how best we can extend this session, to the Montego Bay area. So those were the discussions that we're having along those lines in our breakout room.
So I'll just add, ensuring we take measures to guard against, some of the obstacles that we faced this time around. And just now that we have had the experience, what are some of the preventative measures that we are going to put in place? So like our Montego Bay office is down. what are some of the things that we're going to be doing differently, you know, in the event that something like this should happen again.
Thanks, gentlemen. Yes.
chances
Anyone
are-
else want to share? Anyone else from any of the other groups would like to share what was your takeaway from your group? I think one of the groups I went into, they mentioned that there were internet issues, so persons in the group kept dropping off the calls. I understand that. So maybe some groups may not have had the opportunity to interact.
But let me
I
just say,
see Miss Welsh just placed something on the chat.
Okay, I've not seen it. If you're seeing it, Dr. Hope, you can just go ahead and share what she has.
Sorry, Dr. Semaj. She says that we were in Trelawney recently and people are trying to smile, but you can see the sadness. And I'm going to add, it's like seeing the sadness behind the smile.
Mhm.
I was in group 2, and the consensus of the persons in group 2 was that we're seeing the physical damage, but in terms of the fear and the fright is the psychological damage that's taken place, you know, beneath the surface, and even the issues of persons the elderly, people who didn't understand in terms of before the hurricane, you should have stock up on your medication. But guess what? Look, if you're on National Health Fund, you know, they only allow you a specific date to get your medication. So if your medication was going to finish the day of the hurricane, chances are you're out of it now for the next 2-3 weeks, because the pharmacies in many of these areas don't exist anymore. The electricity is not available. So, and one point individually, there are going to be serious medical crises as a result of persons who are off their medication for 2-3 weeks. So, you know, one of my mantras is that the best is yet to come. But coming out of this, I think the worst is yet to come in terms of the physical capabilities. But the importance of being able to have conversations and discussions, and we can points of contact and points of strength, you know, iron sharpened iron. So that needs to happen a lot more.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Semaj. I was just typing in the chat that we're 6 minutes out in terms of the time that we had allotted. And so I needed to share that and also to get permission from participants to just, you know, quickly wrap up and make sense of all this and, you know, where we go from here. I
What was
will
the
give.
consensus from group 3,
So
Dr. Sandra?
so I'm not getting a response. So we're permission to continue. So persons can just give me an indication, you know, if they have another 5 minutes or so. All right. Yes. Okay. Permission granted, of course. Okay. This is important. Okay. Yes. Yes, Dr. Hope. Yes, we can continue. And we thank you for that. I know we haven't had time yet to even talk about how do we help others? What do we say? What do we even ask? Because we wanted you to leave with 2 tools, how to help yourself and how to help others. So I think that's what I would quickly pivot to. And then we wrap up. I will give each facilitator a chance to just kind of wrap things up and any final comments from participants. Your main job is that you're going to put in the chat a word or just how you're feeling leaving. What's your takeaway? How are you feeling now leaving? So, and then I will share that as you drop that in the chat. So let's talk now about, you know, how do we help others? What phrases can we use? What's in the language bank that we can pull from? What can we do at work to help others? You know, things like maybe, you know, swapping schedules based on what's more convenient for somebody else based on their home situation, staggering starts, you know, some body coverage, daily 5-minute huddle or stand up before things start, keeping everything transparent, just being human, asking people how they're feeling. It's not business as usual. And giving them the grace to say they're not ready to talk if that is the case. So over to you, Dr. Hope and Dr. Semaj. Dr. Hope, you want to go first?
Thank you, Dr. Sandra. One of the things that I wanted to acknowledge when you asked participants how they're feeling right now, and one of the that stood out to me, Stacey Ann mentioned that she feels encouraged. That's positive when we think of where do we go from here. Resources, I'm sure you're going to share that at the end. And as I shared in that group meeting that I went into, is that this is not a quick fix. This is a process, and this is the beginning of the process. What I'm hoping is a takeaway is how do I now make sure that as I process this loss, that I now make sure that I am more intentional about taking care of myself. Because at a cellular level, there are things that are going on in my body, and some of the symptoms that were shared by other group members, how I make sure that this doesn't have a long-term effect on me. The breath exercise, the centering, it is okay. Make sure that take off your shoes, the grounding portion. If you've never done this before, I'm not making guarantees, but I can promise you that if you take your shoe off and just walk in a safe area on the earth and just try that exercise for a minute or two, it is a starting point with self-care and with healing your body.
I want to add one. I put in the chat, the semajmindspar.com. I publish something every day. And I've been focusing specifically on how do we heal, how do we recover from Melissa. So I recommend that, please. Also, I noticed that the majority of the persons on this call are women. It's not accidental. Men have very limited health-seeking behavior. That's why men die. One of the reasons why men die earlier than women, because when things are diagnosed as men, it's too late because they don't have early health-seeking behavior. So, ladies and even gentlemen who are on, you need to please engage the men in your life. The men at work, the men around, even just how you do. And when I say good man, no, don't accept that. What version of good? Good, 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 good. But then self-disclosure is a useful thing. Tell them how you are feeling. And then that will help them to unload, because a lot of men are holding things in. And as my article today says, anyway, it maga,
The data go pop.
It pop. So please go read my article today. Anyway, it maga, it pop. So you can see where it was maga in Jamaica and where it popped. And there's more popping to come. Amen.
Okay, thank you for sharing that, Dr. Semaj. So as we process, as we move on with our day, what's the takeaway? Feel free to just drop the word. Encouraged is a good word I'm seeing. It's good that you're leaving here feeling encouraged. I'm feeling hopeful. Just the fact that persons took the time to be here. I'm feeling hopeful that people are taking mental health seriously. And mental health is not just about insanity. We have a culture that's a whole other conversation. But again, I'm hearing a bit hopeful. And know when you need help. Know when your team needs help. Know when it is beyond your training and competence, when you need to call in the expert. Leaders are not therapists. We're leaders, right? We do the best we can, but if you're not trained in that area, you may need to refer someone out. If your company has an employee assistance program to help with things like these, this is the time when you need to encourage your staff members to take advantage of it. Ask people, how are they doing? How are they feeling? And really mean it. And stop to listen. Stop to listen. So you're taking care of self, then you're taking care of what's happening in your own home, and then work. And that is the order I think you would need to look at it in. You can't jump to fixing everything with the business, with the team at work, and you haven't taken care of home, whether children, partner, extended family members, and yourself. As leaders, people depend on us, and so most people will always feel that, she all right, I'm all right. And because we never ask for help, and we never show weakness, and we never show vulnerability. No, it's not the time for that. It is not. Sometimes as a leader, the best you can do in sharing with somebody and talking to them and hearing what's going on with them is to show your own vulnerability, that I hear you, I feel you. I not only sympathize, but I empathize because
And I've
I
been there.
understand.
I have been there, and I am where you are.
Yes. Someone is saying, I feel enlightened. I feel enlightened, a good technique for moving on and helping others. You're not trying to solve every problem in one day, but every little bit that you can do to move the needle forward, in taking persons to a better place, will help, will help. So as you leave today, you're like, one thing you're going to do for you, one technique that you can use with others. At least those two things. It's very simple. What you're going to do for you and what you can do to help somebody else. I thank you all for joining. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for holding this sacred space. And thank you for caring, and for my co-facilitators. Thank you so much. For the tech people who help to support this and make it happen. Thank you again. If you need a recording of this, we'll share it with you. If you also need that, we should have a follow-up session. And if you have any ideas, please reach out and share that with you. Oh, you're also welcome. Breathing techniques, asking how they're feeling. Persons are just saying thanks. Thanks for facilitating. Thanks for doing this. It was important. And go and enjoy the rest of your day. Namaste.